It doesn't matter who you are and how tough you think you are. When you talk about tough human beings on planet Earth and special operations, and they still have suicides in that population. So everybody has a breaking point.
Welcome to another edition of Living Boldly with Purpose, and I'm Dr. B. I am your host, and as I get to do every single time when I start these is just think about how many amazing people are out there that are making a difference. People who are, at the top of their game, sometimes I say in the top 1%. And sometimes when we say that word, top 1%, we always think of income, right? We think of, these billionaires that are out there. And I'm not saying the billionaires aren't making a difference, because they are making a difference in lots of people's life, especially if they have lots of employees and people. But there are just some people who make a difference in the lives of individuals on a daily basis, one-on-one. I think sometimes, the chances of me ever meeting Elon Musk and spending a whole bunch of time and him helping me, and even if I did meet him, there's probably, I don't live in that world, and I don't know if he would even have anything to say to me other than hi. But there are other people that I interact all the time with. And, Dr. Josh, how do you say your last name? McConkie's?
McConkie's, yeah.
All right. So Josh McConkie's, is one of those folks that I know is making a difference, and I know is taking people on one at a time. Josh, my daughter, she is a neurologist at a hospital. So I know, she doesn't like the ER very much, although she's a stroke doctor, right? So she's in this, so they have this, here in Denver, they have like this stroke unit that goes out, and it's able to, like, if they can, diagnose somebody right away when the ambulance get there on the stroke unit, they're able to save a lot more lives. Why? Because they're actually doing treatment at the home. Like the EMTs that show up have all the, I don't know if it's a CAT scan type thing or things that they can diagnose right there at the house before they ever come to the hospital and get things going. And so I know you're in emergency medicine and just, not only helping people physically, but you do a whole bunch of other stuff. You work with the military. You work with, I can remember my dad here was he was in the Navy, and then when he finished his years at the Navy, decided to go into the Air Force Reserves. And so I had the joy in my childhood of, I don't think you could do that now, but over at Buckley Air Force Base, they had helicopters and planes and all kinds of stuff out on the tarmac and stuff. And I was able to play on them and run around and jump around. Which
they're still there. They're still there.
Yeah, but I don't think the kids can go play on them, right?
They got some family days.
Do they?
Go
Okay,
do that.
cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I would go once a month, and I was allowed to bring one friend every single month. He was a photographer, so he had pretty much the run of the whole base to take pictures and stuff. And so once a month on his weekend, I would get to bring a friend, and we got to play in the Air Force at the Air Force Base for.
Sounds fun.
Forever. It was a ton of fun. But when we think about living boldly with purpose and what is our purpose, and, as I spend my time talking about, well, how do I help people become the person they need to be in order to do what God put them on this earth to do? And Dr. Josh here is going to talk about, I've asked him to tell his story. I've asked him to kind of go through what made him this incredible man who goes out and helps people. And so hopefully you will be able to take some really key points out of this, and then we're going to chop it up right after he's done with the story. And so Dr. Josh, thank you for being on today. Thank you for taking your time out, as busy as you are. I know, like last week, you said you were at the inauguration and you were in DC and you're all over the place. And so thank you very much for just spending time with us today. Maybe you can just start with your story, and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. I grew up in a very rural, small town in western Nebraska. So you're there in Colorado. I grew up in Alliance, Nebraska. It's a small railroad town.
Okay.
My father is a railroader. My grandfather was a railroader, and my great grandfather was a railroader. They were railroaders up around Missoula, Montana. So, I was the first McConkie to go to college. Aunts, uncles, cousins, anybody. So, just kind of blue collar beginnings there. It's a agricultural, region of the country, and the railroad is pretty much what runs through there. I could not be contained. I always wanted to travel. I was a huge military history buff and always wanted to join the military. So I got a scholarship to Chadron State College. It's a small school in western Nebraska
Okay.
to get into medical school. I was always the math and science nerd, and my stepmom was a nurse. So I always enjoyed the crazy stories that she told from the hospital and from the emergency departments. So I've been very fortunate in my career that I've been able to put those two together. So as an emergency physician, who's practiced medicine for 23 years, being in the military for 23 years, I've been a battalion surgeon, a flight surgeon, served in Iraq in 2007, flying medevac and taking care of men and women injured on the battlefield. That's probably professionally the thing that I'm the most proud of. Changed me a lot, had a lot of life changes coming back to the United States after that combat tour, and actually moved to New Zealand for a
Really?
year after that, just trying to get my head straight. I kind of struggled coming back to the US. And, you know, one day I'm in a medevac helicopter taking care of men and women taking bullets for this country, and, you know, air assaults and mortar attacks. And then I'm just dropped back here in Omaha, Nebraska, where I was working. And it was, it was kind of a reverse culture shock. It
Oh
was
yeah,
hard for me. I
yeah.
met my wife, Elsa, is an amazing person. She was an elementary school art teacher and just sweetest, kindest human being. And I'm just the grizzled, crusty, combat veteran. And she had a great idea. Let's do something fun. Let's just move overseas. So we moved to New Zealand. We lived in Rotorua. I practiced in a little emergency department there and played soccer at Rotorua United. Played
Really?
goalkeeper and just got my head straight and kind of realized what life is all about. During that combat tour, it changed me a lot.
Mhm.
I've always had a strong faith, but I got much more in touch with my faith. My chaplain, I've got a picture on my wall up here of, Chaplain Higgins was my chaplain, the battalion chaplain in Iraq. And I realized very quickly that nobody cares how big your house is, and nobody cares what kind of car you drive. Nobody really cares how much money you make. None of that stuff matters. You're in a combat zone and you're trying to live or die, and you just take care of the men and women around you. And it's such a singular focus of taking care of men and women that are serving this country. And you see a lot of them lose their lives, and you carry those body bags off the battlefield. It changes you. And so kind of from that point on, when you look at, what your purpose in life is really all about, I wake up every single day thinking about those men and women and try to do something to make America a better place, whether that's saving lives in the emergency department, whether that's serving as a commander now in the Air Force Reserves, trying to develop the future leaders and war fighters for this country. I flew as a critical care air transport doc for a while in the military, spent time as a Duke professor, educating, young doctors going into emergency medicine to go out there and do great things in the world. And right now I've got a wife and three amazing children that I'm trying to make sure that they have every chance to be successful and make some contributions to make America a better place. Wrote a book last year. They got some good critical acclaim there. And I wake up every morning thinking about that.
You absolutely keep busy.
I do. I stay very busy. So they call me the MacGyver doctor.
Okay.
I wear lots of different hats. I I ran a U.S. congressional race last year as
Oh,
well,
did you really? Okay.
and I got outspent by $12 million, unfortunately. So
Oh,
I
dude.
learned the hard way that you actually can just buy an election and not be qualified. So
Yeah, no, it is.
that
Our politics in our country are just.
yeah. Well, yeah, so the candidate that did win through that, Brad Knott, great guy. I did endorse him after the primary. Got to talk with him this last weekend up in D.C. as well because I was there for the inauguration. I was supposed to be leading the Air Force contingent for the parade for the presidential inauguration because I commanded Andrews Air Force Base, but the weather was so bad that it got canceled.
That's so sad because that would have been So yeah, because they were inside, I think. It's usually outside. And
Yeah, it's outside. They moved just part of it into the Capital One Arena, but it was nowhere near big enough for a
yeah,
military parade. So it was brutal cold. My wife, her feet were absolutely destroyed just walking around trying to get to the commander in chief ball that evening. The security lines were crazy, and the weather was it was absolutely brutal.
so you're still in Nebraska now, or did you come back from New Zealand to
No,
Nebraska?
yeah, I'm in North Carolina. So
Oh,
I'm
you're in
in
North Carolina.
Apex, just outside of Raleigh. I
Okay.
moved out here with the military about 2012 for some opportunities at Fort Bragg,
Okay.
and had a set of twins that were born, and had to make one of those life decisions. Hey, do you want to be part of one of these elite tier one teams and do some really cool stuff, or do you want to be a part of raising your family? And so I made the right call, but that's what moved us here initially.
Okay. So Nebraska, New Zealand, North Carolina,
Yeah.
uh, those got to all be way different climates and people and around, but just some wonderful people around the.
Yeah, I get to meet wonderful people wherever you go. There was a stop in Texas there. There was a stop in Australia after that, and then back to North Carolina. So this is the last move. We are never moving again, ever.
That's it. That's done. So you say until you
Yeah,
actually do the congressional race,
yeah.
right? And
If
then,
the president calls me up, I've already talked with my wife. If I get a phone call from the president, I might, if there's some opportunities, that would be the only thing that changes it.
oh my gosh. Well, so many questions. So your wife is Elsa. Did she ever get, part of the Disney world of, Frozen and people?
She does. So, and obviously she was, before the was named that before the movie, but
Oh
her
yeah.
middle name is Aurora. So she is Elsa Aurora. So she's got two Disney princesses in there. And, obviously with three kids, we were always big fans of Disney and did some of those trips early on. Much older now, but yeah, we had a lot of fun earlier.
Oh, that's good. My son works for Pixar. So
Oh,
yeah,
great.
Disney eyes all the time. He gets loaned out to Disney to do
Oh,
graphic
how fun.
work over there. So yeah, so we're a big Disney family because I guess we have to be. But at least we get to go to Disneyland for free, right? So that makes it always fun because that can
Yeah.
be a crazy trip. As I listen to your story and emergency medicine and doing all these things, your identity, because one of the things that you said as part of your story is you couldn't be caged in, so you had to branch out. You had to leave. You said you were the first person in your family that went to college, but you didn't just go to college, right? You lived at college for about 8 years, and all the things you do is
Yeah. I went the long route, college, medical school, residency. It's a long track, but I enjoyed the challenge though. That's one of the reasons why I chose that profession. And then you get to do some great things. Medicine in the United States is kind of a beast, and there's always kind of insurance issues, and the government intervention oh, has not been fun to see that transition over the past 20 years. But when you focus on just trying to save lives and take care of people, that's a very noble career. I've been very fortunate, very blessed.
how does it differ from us and then being in Australia, New Zealand, and the other countries that is different in medicine? Does everybody just get care, or how does all
Yeah. There's big differences in the systems. The medicine is the same wherever you go. I mean,
yeah,
diabetes is diabetes, a car accident is a car accident, heart attack, that doesn't change, but the way that those systems respond to it does. And what you'll see in socialized healthcare systems, with a lot of emergencies with primary care, they do a fairly good job. But when you actually have a real problem, say you've got uh, a rare form of cancer, or some neuro, you said your daughter was a neurologist, some rare neurologic disease, the, the issues and the wait times are very, very real. So one of the first abdominal pain patients with a gallbladder disease that I took care of when I was in Australia, I talked to this, she's 40-year-old female, your classic gallbladder patient. And she said, well, I've been waiting for 3 years for my surgery. And I was like, three years. Well, that's not right. You can't be waiting 3 years. And I went and grabbed a colleague and say, hey, she says she's been waiting for 3 years. She keeps having these gallbladder attacks. I think, oh yeah, man, it might be 5 or 6 years. But if you had that private insurance card at the exact same hospital, the exact same surgeon, they would wheel you across the street and do the surgery the next day. So, so socialized medicine is not all that it's cracked up to be. Having lived it and worked at it, there's definitely pluses and minuses to both. With the United States, all the healthcare and big pharma and those types of things. Every healthcare system has its issues, but I'll take the U.S.
That's what I say. I don't think I'd rather be anywhere else, even with
Yeah.
all the I guess the hoops and things that you have to jump through.
Yeah,
Are,
this is the last bastion of freedom on planet Earth, America. I've got all kinds of fun stories from my time in Australia. I was there during COVID. I watched them just lock down people in apartments for 111 days. I kid you not, in Melbourne. It was wild.
well, I want to talk a little bit about identity if we can, because your identity has absolutely been shaped. Your identity has been massaged and formulated. And what can you attribute who you are today based on, the kid who came from Nebraska that, sounds like had a great family growing up and learning things, but what kind of are the factors that helped you become the man that you are?
So every individual has a group of people around them that helps them become who they are. That's part of my leadership ethos. Be the weight behind the spear, right? Being the weight behind someone or something that matters. For me, that's been my family. It's been my wife, my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, teachers, coaches. I've had great coaches and teachers. It is a very small town, so you really kind of had a lot closer relationship with the people around you. It really takes a village to raise a child, and Alliance, Nebraska is a very small village, and so everyone kind of knew your business and who your parents were and who your siblings were, and if you got into trouble, everybody knew about it. So, being very young and throwing snowballs at the cop car, they knew exactly where to take you. you know, you just find a little trouble like that as a kid. But the community around me, as I wrote my book, "Be the Weight Behind the Spear," just reflecting on all those people that had such a huge impact on my life, really kind of put things into perspective for me. But it takes a whole village.
And maybe we can talk about that a little bit more, because the first thing that came to mind was Goliath, and when you said the weight behind the spear, I think of him carrying a 16-pound shot put, pretty much. I'm a track guy, so like at the tip of his spear, but he didn't really have anybody behind him, right? And so David was able to come and knock him in the head with the rock. But so when you talk about the weight behind the spear, what are you really, like, tell me about how that book was formulated, or just in your mind, what that means? Because you talked about really cool people in your life that are all part of that. But what does it mean to be the weight behind the spear?
So I'll just use the example, with my faith and my grandfather. When I was in middle school, like seventh or eighth grade, I was raised Lutheran, and you go through confirmation, and I fiddled around and got into some trouble, and did not get initially through the confirmation classes. I don't, not that I was a super troubled young kid, but I found a lot of trouble and like to cause mischief. And my grandfather, he pulled me aside. My grandpa Delbert pulled me aside, and he spent an entire summer and just going over, you had to memorize, passages and the Apostles' Creed and all of those things. And it kind of just put things into perspective, because my grandfather was busy. He had plenty of other stuff to do. And he took this time to sit down with me, and it really showed me how important that faith is. Not recognizing that when you're a child, when you're a kid growing up, but when you're sitting in Iraq, as they're shooting down helicopters. Like the first day I landed there, they shot down a helicopter, and the first 2 weeks were horrific. I was like, man, I'm going to die here. A little bit of a panic. I called my cousin. It's like, wow, I made a terrible decision. Like what am I doing here? And my cousin just had some great words, and my chaplain, helped me out. And from then on, once you just hand your life over to God, and it's not that I didn't care about dying. It's just that the situation that I was in, it was very real, and you just have to be okay with that. And now you can get your job done. And I definitely could not have survived that, like, emotionally, without my faith. So you look back at what my grandfather did for me, gosh, however many years ago that was, I wouldn't be where I am right now without that.
So that's so cool. I want to come back to faith, but I want to move because I think it'll come back, circle around, because I want to talk about health, and because you're a physician, but mental health is a big part of our health and what it takes to be healthy. And you have seen and experienced a whole lot that most people in our world will never experience. And so, if you maybe you can just kind of talk about not only your, a little bit of maybe about your mental health journey, but how do you help people? And you can circle back in faith. You'll get through some of these things because, sometimes people think they got to do everything by themselves. They got to, they don't have that, weight behind the spear, I guess, of folks that are there to help out. And they seem to flounder a little bit. So how have you been able to, through being a physician and through commanding and through being a leader, help folks in this arena of mental health?
So with 22 years in the emergency department, I've seen so much anxiety and depression and suicides, unfortunately. And in the military, I've worked with special operations. I've, been in combat. It doesn't matter who you are and how tough you think you are. I've seen some of the most amazing, like when you talk about tough human beings on planet Earth and special operations, and they still have suicides in that population. So everybody has a breaking point. Everybody. Some people's is a little bit higher than other people's, but everybody has a breaking point. Like life will throw you curveballs, horrible things will happen. I've seen, gosh, like murders and rapes and just the most horrific things you can imagine. The people that put people through, like life will break you at some point. Everybody has a breaking point. Don't go through that alone. You are not alone. Don't don't give in to that stigma of mental health. Don't be afraid to seek help and talk with the people and the friends and the family around you, whether it's whether it is a coach or it's a coworker or a family member or just a really good friend that you've known since high school. Like don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Just let people know what you're going through, and you're going to find out that most people have experienced something like that and can relate and show that empathy and just show you that light at the end of the tunnel. Depression is a horrific disease, and it's very dark and a horrible place. I've seen so many people not make it through that tunnel. It's always hard to do those suicides when you have to talk with that family, when you have to sit down and tell them that that loved one, it's a son or a daughter or grandma or a parent. Man, I've been doing this for a long time. It's always tough. So don't do it alone. Surround yourself with good people and lean on that weight. There's a weight behind you. Like, don't be afraid to ask.
And with that, like, how do you know when it's time, I guess, to talk to somebody? Like, what are some of the signs that somebody would be feeling that says, I need to talk to somebody? And then second is, how if you don't really know who to go to, how do you access? Because some people have great friends and coaches and
Mhm.
family that are available, and then some people you don't want to. They have those families that you don't want to actually have a
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, exactly. I mean, hey, everybody's got family drama going on, but when you start off with the simple things, is how do you recognize those signs?
Mhm.
When someone starts to withdraw, when they're not participating in things that they used to really enjoy doing, there'll be sleep issues. Some people will lean on drugs or alcohol. They'll withdraw. Um, some people just kind of get more angry. Just when you notice changes in people, I mean, the more time you spend with like coworkers and friends, you know what their normal is. When you
Mhm.
start seeing deviations from that, and especially things that they used to enjoy, where they just aren't as engaged and they start to withdraw, those are times to just kind of just duck in there. Hey, how you doing? I kind of noticed that, man, you love football, but you didn't want to come over for my Super Bowl party. Like, hey, you doing okay? You know, just ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. You're not planting a seed in somebody. When you say, "Hey, I'm really concerned about you. You're drinking a ton more, and you're not, being part of the family." And like, are you doing okay? Are you depressed? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Like a lot of people get this false thought that, hey, if I mention the word suicide or if I ask them that, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to plant that seed in their brain. Like, no, No, I promise you, if they're at that point, they're thinking about it, whether you say anything or not.
Gotcha.
And, if you are that person, it's that's difficult, but you always have like an emergency outlets, like your healthcare professionals. They do those screening questions every time you basically see when you go for a primary care visit or you go to an urgent care or an emergency department. If you really feel like you have nobody to talk to, like you can go to church, you can talk with your pastor, I mean, family, friends. You can always just go to an emergency department. If you want total anonymous, I don't want anybody to know I'm at that point, just go to your nearest emergency department. That's what we're there for. We're equipped for that. Everybody has mental health resources. Some hospitals better than others, but you can always go to emergency department and get that health screening. And like as an emergency physician, I take tremendous pride in that. And again, my coworkers and people in healthcare, docs, nurses, physician assistants, we're that last line of defense, for the American healthcare system, and that's what we're there for. We're very proud of that.
I didn't realize that the ED would be a place that you can go. When I think of, especially when I think of veterans or something, I think going to the VA or something. But I didn't realize that. I know there's all these like mental health places that are out in the community that have things going all the time. But that's a really good place, I think, to start, or not to start. I mean, if you can't find, if you don't have people, obviously, if you have family and friends and people who can talk to you and walk you through, I think church is a really good place as well. Especially part
Those
of it.
mental health resources are very hard to find at times. They're
Okay.
very, very overwhelmed. It takes
Okay.
weeks or months or 6 months to get an appointment. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of so many people with this mental health crisis that we have right now. It is difficult. So you always have that last stop. You can always go to your emergency department.
When I think of folks who've been in the military, you almost, especially have been in wars, you always wonder if they're okay, if they're whatever that they saw or whatever they didn't see. Are there plenty of resources throughout the military that can help for somebody who was a vet or I guess it's just my assumption sometimes, and I think my assumption is wrong. They got to come back and they're fine, but I'm always worried about the stability, because they tell me when I was working in homeless services, we had a lot of vets that were part of our system. But that was, more than just, I think it was more than, maybe it started by going to war, but it seemed like it was a lot more issues when they came back than it was when they were there.
Yeah, no, haven't been there myself. I definitely know how difficult it can be to just kind of come back to your regular life and plug back in like everything is just fine. That you can't see those things, and just see how some parts of the world operate, and just the horrible things that people will do to each other, and then just come back and pretend like everything's fine, and go to the movies and catch some football games with the friends. It was hard. It took me a couple of years to really get back to a place where I could just kind of be comfortable and be myself again and talk about things, without getting too emotional. Everybody has their own ways of dealing with that. You see a lot of drug and alcohol abuse for sure. And that's when you see, and that just further worsens the depression and the suicide. There are a tremendous amount of suicides in our military population, in our veteran population. There's lots of resources for them with the VA. And there's always community resources, military one source. There's kind of like this one source number you can always call and get all kinds of resources for active military reserve guards. But the VA is always there for you. They do tie it to make sure you have a DD 214 and that you had a service connected issue. But there's plenty of resources. But it's still a problem that really isn't being addressed a lot of times.
Wow. Got a couple more in this line of thought, and then we can move on. But one of them is social media, right? We have this social media that's out there where anybody can say anything about anybody at any time. And then we see people's best life, right? People who get in and they're watching and they're, we're doing stuff and we're creating content that, I hope helps folks. But there's so many people that will just get on and then they'll talk about each other, or they'll watch somebody and compare, right? We get into this comparison thing. Like I knew that guy 10 years ago and now he's doing great, because all he's really posting is all the great stuff of his life, right? He's not posting the day-to-day, going on. How does that impact, I guess, I don't know if it's just mental health or just overall belief in oneself, overall, self-worth and that kind of stuff? Are you seeing like more and more folks that struggle because of the social media being out there and this, all these algorithms that you only get to see what they want you to see, I guess.
Yeah, that's a whole the algorithms. That's a whole separate problem. But there's two sides of that coin.
Okay.
So on one side, there's a lot of people that can still maintain connections and friends. Like a lot of my combat friends that were scattered all over the country, and we'll still get some random Facebook messages, or they'll comment on one of my posts, and that does tie people together. And that we've had there was one big reunion that we had a couple years after getting back. That was all everybody found out on Facebook. So there are some positive things. I do see a lot more negative from social media, especially in the younger population, because they've grown up with that. That's all they've known their entire life, is that social media world. And some of them don't realize that that's not necessarily real life. Like, whoever is behind those posts, they're putting on a show. They're trying to ramp up engagement. They're trying to get more likes. They're trying to plug into that algorithm to make themselves blow up and get a million views on something, get super popular, so they can get some ad revenue. That's not necessarily real life. It's reality, and that's the way, like, a lot of Americans engage with other people around them know, but it's not exactly real life. So you have to take that just a little bit for the grain of salt and the entertainment value, as long as you understand that. The younger population, uh, like 25, 30 years old and younger, has kind of grown up with this, and that really has been their reality, and it's not been good for them. There's study after study that links increased anxiety, depression, and suicide to um, social media use under the age of 16, and a lot of them even 18 years old. So for my kids, there is no social media. They certainly have access to the internet and do some gaming and FaceTime and those types of things. But as far as having like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, no, it is really not healthy under age 16.
Oh man, I think that's so important. Thank you for not only doing that, but being able to share that. Yeah, it is not. The last school that I was teaching at, when I had a whole bunch of natives just getting going, the things that people would say to each other online that they would never say
Oh,
in their face.
you
Would never.
never say those things to somebody in front of their face. You know, 20, 30 years ago, or even not that long ago, if you wanted to bully somebody, you had to walk up to them and punch them in the nose. Now they just can incessantly just bombard people on their social media accounts and just make hell for these kids. And I've seen some suicides as a result of that. I mean, it really it's hard for these kids. That's their reality, and that's what they've known their entire life. So that digital social media world is their reality in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and there's so much, like you said, that's not real. I get these, I don't know, texts. I don't know how anybody gets my number. I'm not a senior yet, but I get these like things for Medicaid. But I get some people saying like, "Hi, you know, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to meet you today," and I'm like, "I have no idea who you are." It's just a text, and I'm like, and I'll text back. I'll say, "I don't know who you are, but if you think that you're real." And I maybe somebody from Russia or something trying to get all my information. If you think you're real, buy my book, take a picture with my book, and then we can start having a conversation.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm doing. But when you think about connection and how important, because you talked about, especially it's in your book, the power of relationships and how important relationships are. And then we have this social media thing that's out there. Maybe kind of go through ways to establishing relationships that that I guess we need more than we need to be able to connect with everybody outside of us, right? Because I don't need to have 2,000 friends, right? I need to have 10 really good ones, or 50 really good ones, or a community of people. And it sounds like with your kids and the things that you do, you figured out how to create circles of relationships that can truly matter.
Yeah, what's your goal for having the social media? Are you running a business? Are you trying to grow engagement? Are you selling a product? Are you, running a political campaign? I mean, people have different goals with that. But if it's just you as an individual, I will only surround myself with good people. I don't surround myself with people that are going to try to tear me down and say kind of mean, nasty things. And on that online, when you people that'll make some of these horrific comments and things online, don't take any of that personal. There's always going to be those trolls out there who just like to stir up trouble. Like, don't put any stock or any faith into comments of people that you would not seek advice from. So if these aren't people that you would go to with your problems and just say, hey, like dad or grandpa or your best friend or even a really good coworker, if these aren't people you would go to and ask for advice, then who cares what they have to say? It doesn't matter in the slightest. Don't put any stock into that at all. If this isn't someone that you would seek advice from, then it doesn't matter. Just ignore it completely.
Yeah, my pastor taught me this, I don't know, it's almost 30 years ago. He said that hurting people hurt people. Hurting people hurt people. And you can find out why they're hurting, then it changes the whole conversation.
Mhm.
What would you say? What would you say to that? I mean, have you found that to be true in your life that people lash out when they're hurting, or
Yeah, it's always someone they either have a vendetta or they've been slighted by something. There's some pain in their life from something, events, work. Everyone's got their own stressors, but generally, those people that project that kind of negative energy, it's compensating for something. Something's going on in their life. If you had the time, if this was somebody that we were face to face having some of those discussions, I would literally say, "Hey, like, how you doing, man? Like, you seem really upset. What's going on in your life? Let's chill out, have a drink, and chat about it." That's what I do a work about every day, right? As a physician, but it's hard to do that online, and so just don't put too much time into the trolls online. If it's somebody you can talk to, like in a real life space somewhere, and try to get down to the roots of what's going on, and I think that helps everybody. Probably get them to a better place too. But there's so much of that online. Wow.
yeah, and I think you'd have to have a relationship with that person if you're even going to reach out. But
Yeah.
just the knowledge is this person is saying this because he's probably hurting.
Mhm.
Just saying that in your mind, I guess it eases my mind going, man, I wish I would love to pray for him. I wish that,
Yeah.
find some comfort in his life because who has time to lash out like that? If your
Yeah,
life,
it takes a lot of energy to be that negative.
it does. It does. And if your life is going great, really, even if you're mad at somebody, but the rest of your life is going good, you don't take the time just to lash out to the person
Yeah.
who's there. There's got to be something behind that. And so if you are receiving some of those things because somebody is mad at you, or just realize they're probably hurting in a big way. You have been successful in leadership. And if success leaves clues, which I think it always does, when it comes to trust and being able to find those relationships that you can trust or finding situations that you can trust, do you have a formula that you use that helps you identify who and who you can't trust? Because when you're in charge of as many people as you are, and I know there's levels, especially in the military or even in an operating room,
Mhm.
how do you find those that you can trust and then that know that hey, they got your back or you got their back?
Boy, after being in the military for 20 some years and, just college, medical school, work, families, friends, you recognize the people that you can trust. And I'm sure that's probably a little bit different for everybody, but if you can be yourself, don't have to be fake. Like, certainly as a military commander, there's amount of respect that you have just for the rank that you have, and as a leader, as a commander. But being genuine with people and just being yourself, they're going to trust you more. When they know that you're being honest. So honesty has everything to do with it. Just being yourself, being genuine, showing empathy, having listening skills. Not just being there barking orders all the time, but if people are not meeting the standards that you've set for your organization or your squadron or your business, and you sit down with them and they can see that you really care and you're showing that empathy and you're being genuine, and you really care, they're going to recognize that and they're going to trust you, and you'll get a lot better results, number one. And then, they trust you, you can trust them. But there's certainly a lot of skills, those soft communication skills that people will talk about, that make all the difference in the world.
Gotcha. Personal development. You know, uh, how much of our life or our time should be spent on ourselves becoming better, because I think sometimes there's a mixed connect. To me, it's super important. I always want to be learning. I always want to be growing. There's no way you're doing all the things you're doing without a whole lot of personal development and growing. But that's just kind of part of your DNA. What do you say to people that, kind of, just take life as it goes and they really don't work on themselves too much, but they want the results of what personal development takes?
Well, that's you're cheating yourself. You're cheating the process. So you're missing out on a lot of opportunities. So don't have a big ego. So you see leadership. Um, they you can tell the people that just they want that respect just because they want it, whether they've earned it or not.
Mhm.
Don't have a big ego. Just go out there, do the best that you can every day. I love to learn. I'm a super nerdy guy. I like to learn lots of different things all the time. And when I meet people and I talk with people, I don't feel slighted if they're um, making suggestions, or like I'll take suggestions from anybody. Like I'm an adult. I'll determine what I do with that suggestion, but I don't let it bother me. I don't let my ego get in the way. I will learn from anybody. You know, don't have a big ego, be humble, but but I'm very confident. I mean, I know what I do know and I know what I don't know. That's scary as a physician, is you'll see people with the big egos, the doctors that don't know their limitations. Those are the people that kill people. Right. So like doctors don't, this is what we tell residents for years, like doctors don't kill people. Idiot doctors that don't know their limitations kill people. Right. So don't have a big ego. I love to learn. I enjoy learning. You're never done learning. You're never perfect. You're always getting better. Complacency kills.
Yeah. How much of your time do you think you spend on learning and growing? Of, you know, give me a percentage, I guess.
Well, every day. So I get up, I read the paper, and I'll get online and read like CNN and Washington Post, Washington Times. I love information. National security, military affairs. I've always got, as a military commander, like, briefings and national security briefings and things that I go through. I I love to learn. So I probably, if I'm not like in the emergency department working or spending time with my family at a basketball game or having family dinner, I mean, honestly, more than half of my time is spent probably doing just that, learning, trying to figure out how to get better. That's I'm a super nerdy guy. That's what I do.
I love that. Well, I wrote a book called the Decision Formula, and it's about based on making decisions that will change your life. And one of the chapters in there, a thing I talk about, is the disciplines you have to have in order to make great decisions. And part of it is, like I said, if you want to be a world class swimmer, but you only want to spend 2 hours a week in the pool, you're never going to be a world class swimmer, right? And I think that if we want to grow and we want to be leaders and we have the results that come from it, we have to be willing to spend that time growing and learning. And
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it has to be purpose driven, right? I mean, like, what is your purpose? What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And then that's going to help determine what you spend your time on and how you better yourself and educate yourself and invest that time. So you have to have a goal. It has to be purpose driven.
well, and I love you can't cheat yourself. You can't cheat learning, right? In order to become the person that you need to be, you have to be that person before you can do or have the results of it. And
Yeah.
somebody is trying to go do, or somebody could be, I'm going to go have, I'm going to go buy this car. Then I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do to afford it, and then I'll become a person who deserves it. And so many, my life was backwards a few times for doing stuff that was just so silly that I never became that person that I needed to be in order to go do the thing that I want to do. I love that. One of the things I would love to do is, we've been talking about a lot of things that you do, but I want to kind of know a little bit about who you are. And through that, what I'm saying is, like, what is it like, or what's your joy of being a dad? What is your joy about being a husband? And who is Dr. Josh when he's not
Mhm.
doing the things that he does, but being the person that is this amazing father and this amazing husband? And and what do you do for fun when you're not, doing do?
Yeah. Spending that time as a family, like seeing my children laugh and learn and ask questions, travel, just seeing the world is a huge, magnificent place. There's a lot of good and there's a lot of evil. And the choices that you make every single day are going to either put you in positions to be successful or it's going to put you in positions to have, bad things happen to you. You have to take ownership of your own life, make conscious decisions. Bad things happen to everybody. There's things that you can't control, but control what you can control, right? And that's you. You can't control other people around you, but just seeing my kids go through life making those decisions, basketball and gymnastics and just getting to experience all the things. Like, all three of my children are very different and very unique. They have the same two parents, they're in the exact same household, they have the exact same resources, and they are three complete individual people. They're all completely different, and I love watching that. I love watching them grow up, and the time I get to spend with my wife. She's just such a sweet, kind person. Everybody loves Elsa. If did you see the TV show Everybody Loves Raymond?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
like everybody loves Elsa. She's just a genuine, happy, pleasant person, and I enjoy spending time with her. We travel a lot. That's kind of the thing that we do together. Obviously, we got married overseas, and we did our 15-year wedding anniversary last year in Portugal. Really enjoyed that, and you just see how other people live. It puts things into perspective. It gives you a little bit more global view, how blessed we really are in the United States. And we just try not to take life for granted. I've stared death in the face several times. I did not think I was going to survive Iraq, and I generally enjoy every single day.
Wow. What your kids, right? They're not screen time kids. They're like relationship kids. So, like, what do you do with kids that don't spend all the day on the computer? And you
Oh,
know,
yeah, we are not perfect parents. We struggle with that as well. Just the weekends, they tend to get more of that screen time, and you really have to be diligent with that. Way we literally set time like at 4:30. They're like trained dogs. They're just like, it's 4:30, like they want that screen time. It's kind of crazy, but getting out, doing sports, staying active, doing some hiking, traveling. Elsa's family's in Florida. I've got family in Seattle and Nebraska. So we try to get out there and do things. Yeah, we're definitely not perfect parents, but yeah, fighting that screen time battle is very real.
oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I am so fortunate that my kids, I guess as I consider, like, my oldest is 36 now. So
Uh-huh.
when he was growing up, my youngest is 28, and when they were growing up, we were in the beginnings of the internet, right? There wasn't tablets which you could just take in the car with you. I mean, we had to
Yeah.
have conversations. We had to, like you said, go out and do stuff and go to games and be, places where, hey, go outside and play. They used to love to go outside and play, like I did. I mean, obviously, when I was a kid, there was we didn't have no internet. We didn't have any computers. We were worried about when the street light comes home. Mom said we had to be home. You were in a small town, so you got
Yep.
to stay a little bit longer than we did. But I think we miss that sometimes. We miss that, those relationships that we get to do. What do you love doing that gets, maybe it is just your family at this point because they're young, but is there some hobbies or some things that you just love doing all the time that allow you to be able to be great at with the other stuff that you do?
It's just the family right now. Because I mean, for me, I work a lot, whether it's military or medicine or recently some politics. It's the family is everything right now. Our kids, we've got a 14-year-old and twin 12-year-olds. We're just going to enjoy every second that they want to spend with us because they're kind of turning into teenagers. The whole teenager age. So
Well,
just trying to enjoy that while we can and try to focus on raising some some productive individuals, and then we travel. So I guess travel would be the big one for Elsa and I.
do you talk to your kids about their dreams and goals and things that they want to accomplish later in life, or we're not there yet, or
All the time.
okay,
And that changes and it fluctuates. Uh, you-
from fireman
yeah,
to
when they were really young, the cartoons that they watched and the superheroes that they used to watch, that all it all changes. Those different stages in life. But yeah, we have that discussion all the time, and make sure they're consciously thinking about the decisions that they're making right now and how that sets them up for success or failure. And, they have to take ownership of those decisions. And when they make bad decisions, make sure they learn from it. We train not to be the helicopter parent or the lawnmower parent. The lawnmower parent is what you see now, where they just mow everything down, and they don't want the kid to have to suffer anything. Like everything has to be perfect. Like you are not doing your kids justice. Because what happens is then they turn 18, get out of the house, have to get a real job or go to college, and they have no idea how to deal with adversity. There's zero resiliency. They just they quit. At the instant that there's a struggle, oh my gosh, it said I quit. And that's what I've seen in some of the younger airmen, unfortunately, that I've been working with as a commander. Just it's a it's a different mindset, and it takes a lot to teach some of those resiliency skills if they haven't had that like their entire life. We're trying. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
That was really kind of the purpose of the book.
Yeah, well, and it's hard to do when they're adults. I mean, it's
Mhm.
because you can't, like when you're a kid, you can say, hey, we're going to go apologize to the person that we just got into or whatever it is, right? And you can walk them through that process or,
Yeah.
hey, this happened. And well, as an adult, you can't, you can't control, you can't make people do anything. You can't. And so that's got to be really hard. I have one last question. I'm going to let you kind of talk some more about the things you would like to talk about. When you think about purpose, what does purpose mean to you?
Purpose means something to everybody. For
Mhm.
me, purpose is taking that whole collection of things that have made me me, that made me who I am, those experiences, my combat time, seeing the lives that were cut short. I try to live every day for those men and women that can't. Those I literally carried some of those body bags. It was very hard. And so I live life every single day for those individuals, and try to make the world a better place for them and for my kids. And that's the challenge, is how do you teach your kids those types of life lessons without them having experienced it? It's always, oh, dad, like wah 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 wah, here's some crazy story from, I just remember myself growing up and the stories my dad told. I put a lot more stock into those stories now, but I'm 47 years old and I have some of my own life experiences. But just trying to raise your kids with a little bit of the chip on the shoulder that I had. I didn't have a lot. We had 5 kids growing up. My kids certainly have a lot more resources than I had growing up. But trying to raise them with that drive and that chip on the shoulder, that's the trick.
That's the trick. I loved it. Well, we have probably 8 or 9 minutes left. What are some things that we didn't get to talk about that you really maybe want to share with folks, or that you just have a burning desire? As so much I can learn from you, and I obviously can't answer all the right questions that somebody would have. So, what would some of those things be?
So, I always talk about the book. You be the weight behind the spear. That's my personal leadership ethos.
Okay.
And that's basically my prescription for people to get engaged in their communities and try to build the future leaders for this country. I've actually started a nonprofit organization as well, the Weight Behind the Spear Foundation. And that whole foundation is to promote volunteerism and community engagement. We've done a lot of fundraising in Western North Carolina after those just devastating floods from Hurricane Helene right at the end of September. So that's keeping me busy right now as well. And those things, what you do every single day matters.
And so, in the book, what are some of the key elements that you will learn by what it takes to be the weight behind the spear? What are some of those? I
Well,
don't
so
know what you tell them, they got to go read
yeah,
the book.
yeah,
But
yeah. Well, the first section of the book is how to be that weight. you know, Learning basic things like accountability, surrounding yourself with good people, what's your goal in life, taking ownership of your own decisions, overcoming obstacles, developing resiliency. That's how that is being the weight behind the spear. Section 2 is all the ways to not be the weight behind the spear. I had a CEO when I was in Texas at a business that I had part ownership in. There was an absolute Oh, he was an evil guy, evil, evil guy, embezzling money, violating Medicare laws, was writing off a lawsuit that was involving sexual harassment claims from another business, sneakily writing it off through our business. And so I had to hire a forensic accountant. Um, Man, he was just basically stole a ton of money. And then when I called him out on it, because I had applied for a national security position on the National Security Council as a reservist, and when I answered the security questions, there was these business issues. I'm like, oh, I cannot be part of this. And he went berserk and just tried to bankrupt everybody. And then COVID hit, so we had filed a lawsuit to prevent him from bankrupting the company. I literally lost $5 million.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Oh,
if you want to know what it's like to lose $5 million, I'll tell you. It's I did the right thing, and just unfortunately, he was an evil guy, and there's evil people out there. But you know, I did the right thing, and that's what I do every day. And I teach my kids a lesson that life isn't always fair, but move on with your life. We actually had to move to Australia for a while because he threatened the family. So FBI got involved, and they ended up not pressing charges because they weren't sure they'd get a conviction. It was in the middle of COVID; everything was chaos.
yeah.
It was a bizarre time. But then you dial the clock forward to 2024, and I won the North Carolina Educational Lottery. So,
Okay.
yeah, you lose 5 million here, gain some on the lottery there. It all evens out in the end. It's all about karma. I have a very strong faith. God's always looking out for you. He put me through the ringer there just to see if I could handle that, and he wanted to see how I would respond to that. And we did the right thing and stayed the course, but it cost us a ton of money. But at the end of the day, we moved back to North Carolina, and then we won the lottery. So it all evens out in the end.
Yeah, and your integrity got to stay intact.
Yeah, absolutely. You cannot
So,
put a price on integrity. That's what I told him. I will not compromise my integrity for a single penny. And he went absolutely irate. He basically had a ton of lawsuits throughout his career, and he always has these non-disclosure agreements signed and buys people off. He offered me a $3.4 million bribe. I told him to shove it up his rear end. He was shocked, and then
wow.
that's when he got super nasty and tried to bankrupt everybody. Yeah, he was a nasty dude.
Oh my gosh. All right. So you told the story of what not to do. Give me an example of somebody who is being the weight behind the sword, who is doing it right, that that you may have fashioned your book after, or that you just hey man, this guy's just doing it right. Give me just you don't have to say his name or anything, but just
Yeah, so teachers and coaches.
okay.
So those were some of the great examples of me for just some teachers and like my wrestling coaches that just, I'm kind of a young kid, and my parents had divorced. I was probably about 5 years old, which is kind of a little bit angry. My dad got moved out to, rural Alliance, Nebraska with the railroad, and just kind of generally was just a little bit of an angry kid. And that group of individuals, like teachers and coaches, you know, became the weight behind my spear, got me focused on things that I could control, academics, wrestling. I fell 3 points shy of qualifying for the state tournament my sophomore year. That's the closest I ever got. And it just about destroyed me. And instead I figured out, like, well, I better find something else that I'm really good at. And so I just made academics my sport, and I just would crush people. And that's kind of what I've done my whole life with academics. I kind of made that my own personal sport. I'm very competitive, and it's got me to where I am today. So everything in life happens for a reason.
Oh my gosh. What's next? What's next for Dr. Josh? Where you
Well, yeah, right now, just focus on work and the family, and there may be some opportunities, that come up here in the next 6 months or so to make a bigger contribution with some policy and try to make that difference and make that impact. But right now, I just focus on my community right here in Apex, North Carolina, with our Weight Behind the Spear Foundation. We got plenty of work to do.
That is so cool. Well, thank you, Jay. The book is Being the Weight Behind the Sword.
Be the weight behind the spear.
Be the weight behind. Oh, why did I say the sword? Spear. I guess I'm confused. So we in the weight behind the spear, and make sure you go out to get it. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon or wherever that's out there.
Yep.
Jeff, thank you for so much for taking your time, being vulnerable, talking your life. Actually, I got so many notes on here just on what to do and how to release. And if you once you get the book and you're wanting to find him online, I would suggest that you do that, because there's probably some secrets and some leadership stuff that you could utilize and what it takes to just be living boldly with purpose. And so for the rest of you, go ahead and make sure that you hit subscribe. You hit the notification button, I guess. But more importantly, if you're finding some of these podcasts to be informational and they're helping you, tell other people about them. Some people say, well, I don't want to impose. I don't want to, I think they might need it. Hey, the worst they can do is just not listen to them, because there's amazing guests on here that if they can watch them, I finally just told my mom about them. I told her about him a long time ago, but she hadn't watched any, and I sent her a couple of people she knew. Now she's like on this binge of watching. Oh, this is helpful. This is good. And my mom's 79 years old, so I don't know how these are helping her. Or don't she just turn 80? I'm sorry, she turned 80 last week. So it's not going to help her be the person behind the sword, but she is totally enjoying them. And so when you get the opportunity to go ahead and take advantage. And so again, thank you, Josh. And we will look forward to talking to you guys on the next one. Have an amazing, awesome day. Hey, don't forget you are God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.